So the question is, does it make sense in 2014 to invest in residential real estate for equities? I began investing in real estate back in the late 1990s, and it definitely was a good time to do it then. We saw tremendous increases in values in the 1990s and into the early 2000s. My strategy back then was to invest in real estate with no money down, and back then it was actually possible to do. You could get loans. There were all kinds of ways to get into real estate without having to take money out of your pocket to do it. So because of that, I wasn't particularly concerned, or overly concerned, I should say, with the sales price. I wanted a price that was marketable, but if it was right at the market, I was fine with that. I did not need to steal the property because I wasn't planning to turn it over anytime soon. And since I didn't have any of my own money in the game, it seemed like a pretty good idea, as long as the mortgage payment made up for as long as the rent covered the mortgage payments, which they did. But then 2008 came along and things changed. The values, some of the properties that I owned lost values as much as 45% of their value. That hurt. I had some of the properties that didn't lose anything anywhere near that, some that stayed pretty level. But even those ones that lost their value have now since then come back. And those ones that were worst hit have recovered at least to the 2008 values. One of the things that I did back in the 1990s that I think was very beneficial for me was I refinanced or did some purchasing or acquisitions using interest-only adjustable rate mortgages, and I used a LIBOR adjustable note. And my idea was at the time that I would perhaps do a better job or more efficient job of amortizing my loans if I could choose which loans that I wanted to pay interest down on each month. And I think that was a good strategy. It did work out well. But what I didn't expect, and it was sort of an unintended benefit or consequence, was that the adjustable rate notes that I had, which most of them I had acquired between 7.5% and 8.5% in those days, had adjusted down to as low as 2.5% and have held there for the last 2 or 3 years. So I've wound up consequently with a tremendous cash flow on each of these properties, and have been able to do my self-amortization as I hoped that I'd be able to do. And now that the values have come back, I'm feeling pretty good about it. And I'm still not interested in selling the properties. But the point I guess I want to make here is, if I had been compelled to sell, if I was ready to retire, if it fit in my financial planning, long-term financial planning goals, then I would have been in difficulty back in 2008 to say around 2012 if I'd had to liquidate, but I fortunately did not. So the question is, what about today? Does it make sense today to invest with that kind of a strategy in mind? And I would say this about it: I think it's going to be harder to find that kind of financing. It's going to be harder to work those kind of deals. They're just not out there. But occasionally you can bump into one, if you can find a way to creatively get into a property and acquire it without having to put money out of your pocket. I think it works. But even if you got to put money into it, I think that still can work. There's still ways you can maybe work that. But certainly the economy is improving. The real estate market is clearly improving. That doesn't mean that it's going to continue that way. And my feeling is that it probably won't. There'll continue to be, peaks and troughs, just like there have been for 200 plus years here in the United States. But if it does go back down, it'll come back up again. So it's a matter of being able to hold out for the marketplace to recover. And if you can do that, if that's in the works for you, then maybe it's a good idea to even consider it today. So that's about all I got to say about it. And if you're interested in doing that, I wish you the best of luck and happy investing.